The morning sun cast long shadows across the Fort Bragg training grounds as Sergeant Maya Chen stepped out of the transport truck. The familiar weight of her gear felt reassuring against her shoulders, but she could already sense the curious stares from the other soldiers gathering for the joint training exercise. It had been 3 months since her last deployment, 3 months of medical leave and recovery. And returning to active duty meant facing questions she wasn't ready to answer. Maya pulled her cap down slightly, hoping to hide the jagged scar that ran from her left temple down to her jaw. The plastic surgeons had done their best. But some wounds leave marks that no amount of medical skill can completely erase. She had learned to live with the stares, the whispered conversations that stopped when she walked by, and the assumptions people made about how she got injured. The training facility buzzed with activity as soldiers from different units prepared for the week-long exercise. Maya recognized some faces from previous missions, but many were new recruits fresh out of basic training. Their crisp uniforms and eager expressions reminded her of her own early days in the military, back when everything seemed simple and the world was divided into clear categories of right and wrong. "Sergeant Chen, reporting for duty, sir," Maya said as she approached the registration table. The officer behind the desk barely looked up from his paperwork, marking her name off a long list and handing her a folder containing her bunk assignment and training schedule. The barracks were standard military issue, with rows of metal beds and lockers lining the walls. Maya found her assigned bunk in the corner, grateful for the relative privacy it offered. She began unpacking her gear with practiced efficiency, each item finding its designated place. The routine was comforting, a familiar ritual that helped calm her nerves about rejoining active training. "Hey, look what we got here," a voice called from across the room. Maya looked up to see a young private, probably no more than 20 years old, standing with a group of other recruits. His name tape read Johnson, and his smirk suggested he thought he was being clever. "Looks like they're sending the wounded warriors back to play soldier." Maya continued unpacking without responding. She had dealt with soldiers like Johnson before, usually young men who confused cruelty with toughness and mistook insults for humor. Most of them learned better with time and experience, assuming they survived long enough to gain both. "I'm talking to you, Scarface," Johnson continued, encouraged by the snickers from his companions. "What happened? You get too close to an IED? Or maybe you just weren't fast enough when things got hot?" Several other soldiers in the barracks had stopped what they were doing to watch the confrontation. Maya could feel their eyes on her, waiting to see how she would respond. She folded her last shirt and placed it in her locker before turning to face Johnson directly. "My name is Sergeant Chen," she said quietly, her voice carrying just enough authority to remind everyone in the room about rank and proper military courtesy. "And I suggest you focus on your own preparation for training." "Private." Johnson's grin widened. He was clearly enjoying the attention and seemed determined to push the situation further. "Oh, I'm sorry, Sergeant Scarface. I didn't realize we were being all formal and stuff. I was just curious about your war wounds. They must be pretty impressive for them to let you come back looking like that." The barracks had grown completely quiet now. Even the most junior recruits understood that Johnson was crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. Maya could see uncertainty flickering in some of their faces, as if they were beginning to realize that their companion might be making a serious mistake. Maya stepped closer to Johnson, close enough that he had to look up slightly to meet her eyes. Despite her relatively small stature, there was something about her presence that made the larger man take an unconscious step backward. "Private Johnson," she said, her voice still calm but with an edge that suggested steel beneath the surface. "I'm going to give you some free advice that might save your career, and possibly your life. In this military, we don't judge soldiers by their scars. We judge them by their actions, their competence, and their ability to complete the mission. Scars just mean someone has been where the action is." Johnson's confidence was beginning to waver, but he was too committed to back down gracefully. "Yeah? Well, maybe some people shouldn't have been where the action was in the first place. Maybe some people aren't cut out for the real work." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Maya's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Soldiers who had been in combat learned to recognize that particular stillness. The moment when someone transitions from talking about violence to being ready to commit it. The real work, Maya repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. Tell me, Private, what do you consider the real work? Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who hasn't seen anything more dangerous than a training exercise. I've seen plenty, Johnson shot back, though his voice lacked conviction. Just because I don't have my face all carved up doesn't mean I haven't been in the shit. Is that right? Maya's smile was thin and cold. And where exactly have you seen this action, Private? Which deployments? Which operations? Johnson's mouth opened and closed without producing words. The answer was written clearly on his face. He hadn't been anywhere or done anything beyond basic training and advanced individual training. He was exactly what Maya had suspected, a recruit trying to prove his toughness by attacking someone he perceived as vulnerable. I thought so, Maya said softly. Let me tell you something about the real work, Private Johnson. The real work isn't about looking tough or talking tough. It's about doing your job when everything is falling apart around you. It's about making decisions that keep your team alive when there are no good options. It's about carrying wounded soldiers to safety when you're hurt yourself. And sometimes, it's about taking the hits so others don't have to. She gestured toward her scarred face without self-consciousness. These marks? They're not something I'm ashamed of. They're proof that when it mattered, I was where I needed to be, doing what I needed to do. Can you say the same? The barracks remained silent, except for the distant sounds of training activities outside. Johnson looked around at his companions, clearly hoping for support, but found only uncomfortable expressions and averted eyes. Even his closest friends seemed to realize that he had gotten himself into a situation that was rapidly spiraling beyond his control. Look, I was just joking around, Johnson said, his voice much quieter now. No harm meant, Sergeant. Maya studied his face for a long moment before responding. Joking around, she repeated. Is that what you call it, when you mock a fellow soldier's combat injuries? When you question someone's courage and competence based on their appearance? I didn't mean it like that, Johnson protested weakly. The problem, Private, is that intent doesn't matter as much as impact. Your words have consequences, whether you mean them to or not, and in a combat situation, that kind of thinking can get people killed. Maya turned away from Johnson and began preparing her gear for the afternoon training session. The conversation was over as far as she was concerned, but the tension in the room remained thick. Other soldiers gradually returned to their own preparations, though many continued to glance occasionally at Johnson, who stood frozen in the middle of the barracks looking lost and uncertain. The afternoon brought the first major training exercise, a complex urban warfare simulation designed to test multiple units working together. Maya found herself assigned to a mixed squad of soldiers from different companies, including several of the recruits who had witnessed the morning's confrontation. Johnson was notably absent from her group, apparently assigned to a different squad. The exercise took place in a mock city constructed specifically for training purposes, complete with multi-story buildings, narrow alleys, and hidden obstacles designed to challenge soldiers' tactical thinking and teamwork abilities. Maya's squad was tasked with securing a series of buildings while coordinating with other units to control key intersections and supply routes. As the team leader briefed them on their objectives, Maya could see some of the younger soldiers watching her with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. Word about the morning's incident had clearly spread, and they seemed unsure what to make of their scarred sergeant. She decided to let her actions speak for themselves. The exercise began with a simulated enemy attack on their starting position. Blank ammunition and electronic sensors created a realistic combat environment while ensuring everyone's safety. Maya moved with practiced efficiency, her commands clear and decisive as she directed her squad's response to the evolving tactical situation. Within minutes, it became clear that Maya's experience gave her a significant advantage in reading the battlefield and anticipating enemy movements. She positioned her soldiers to maximum advantage, coordinated effective crossfire patterns, and managed their advance through hostile territory with minimal casualties. Sergeant Chen called Private Martinez, one of the younger soldiers in her squad. How did you know they would try to flank us from that building? Experience, Maya replied simply, checking her map and planning their next move. You learn to read terrain and predict enemy behavior. It becomes instinct after a while. Is that how you... Martinez gestured vaguely toward Maya's scars, then caught himself. Sorry, Sergeant. I didn't mean to be nosy. It's fine, Martinez. Questions are better than assumptions. Maya folded her map and prepared to move out. My injuries happened during an extraction operation in Afghanistan. Sometimes, doing the right thing comes with a price. As they advanced through the mock urban environment, Maya's squad consistently outperformed expectations. Her tactical decisions were sound. Her leadership was clear and confident, and her ability to adapt to changing situations kept them ahead of the opposition. The recruits who had started the day uncertain about their scarred sergeant were beginning to understand that appearances could be deceiving. The day's training concluded with a debrief session where unit commanders evaluated performance and identified areas for improvement. Maya's squad received recognition for their tactical excellence and teamwork, with particular praise for their innovative approach to urban combat scenarios. As soldiers filed out of the briefing room, Maya noticed several of the recruits from her barracks approaching her. They looked nervous but determined, as if they had made some kind of group decision. Sergeant Chen. One of them began hesitantly. We wanted to apologize for this morning. Johnson was way out of line. And we should have said something. Maya considered their words carefully. These were young soldiers still learning about military culture and proper conduct. Their willingness to acknowledge the problem showed promise for their future development. Apology accepted, she said. But remember this lesson. Silence can be just as damaging as participation. When you see someone being treated unfairly, especially a fellow soldier, you have a responsibility to speak up. That's part of what military brotherhood means. Yes, Sergeant, they replied in unison. As the group dispersed, Maya reflected on the day's events. The morning's confrontation had been unpleasant, but not unexpected. In her years of military service, she had encountered Johnson's type many times before. Most eventually learned better, either through experience or through the kind of correction that military discipline provided. What mattered more was the afternoon's training exercise, where she had been able to demonstrate her competence and earn the respect of her squad through performance rather than words. That was how things should work in the military. Actions counting more than appearances, results mattering more than assumptions. The evening brought news that would change everything about the training exercise. As soldiers gathered in the mess hall for dinner, word spread that a special visitor would be arriving the next morning. General Patricia Morrison, one of the most respected officers in the special operations community, would be observing the remainder of the training and evaluating unit performance. General Morrison was a legend in military circles, known for her innovative tactical thinking and her reputation for developing some of the military's most elite soldiers. Her arrival meant that the training exercise had just become much more serious, with potential career implications for everyone involved. Maya felt a familiar mixture of nervousness and excitement at the news. She had heard stories about General Morrison, but had never served under her command directly. The opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities to such a distinguished officer was both thrilling and intimidating. As she prepared for bed that night, Maya noticed that the atmosphere in the barracks had shifted. The casual joking and relaxed conversations had been replaced by focused preparation and quiet determination. Everyone understood that tomorrow would be different, that they would be performing under the scrutiny of someone whose opinion could significantly impact their military careers. Johnson had been notably subdued throughout the evening, apparently still processing the events of the morning and their implications. Maya observed him quietly studying training manuals and cleaning his gear with unusual attention to detail. Perhaps the day's events had provided him with some much-needed perspective on military professionalism and respect. The next morning would bring new challenges and opportunities. Maya felt ready for whatever might come, confident in her abilities, and secure in the knowledge that she had earned her place through competence and dedication, rather than politics or favoritism. The scars on her face were reminders of battles fought and survived, proof that she belonged exactly where she was. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya's thoughts turned to the wounded soldiers she had helped evacuate during the operation that left her scarred. 3 lives saved, a mission accomplished, and a team brought home safely. Whatever happened tomorrow, those facts remained unchanged. Some things were worth any price, including the marks that reminded her daily of their cost. Dawn arrived with the sharp blast of reveal echoing across the training grounds. Maya was already awake, having learned long ago that restful sleep before important missions was a luxury that experienced soldiers couldn't always afford. She moved through her morning routine with mechanical precision, each action performed with the kind of attention to detail that separated professional soldiers from weekend warriors. The atmosphere in the barracks was noticeably different from the previous morning. Instead of casual banter and relaxed preparation, soldiers moved with focused intensity. Equipment was checked and double-checked. Uniforms were immaculate. And even the most junior recruits seemed to understand that this day would be unlike their previous training experiences. General Morrison was scheduled to arrive at 0800 hours, and every unit on the base was preparing to demonstrate their highest level of performance. Maya could see the mixture of nervousness and excitement on the faces around her, as soldiers prepared for what might be a career-defining day. Private Johnson moved through his preparations with unusual quiet, occasionally glancing in Maya's direction but avoiding direct eye contact. His companions from the previous day seemed equally subdued, apparently still processing the implications of their morning confrontation with a sergeant who had proven herself far more capable than they had initially assumed. The mess hall buzzed with subdued conversations about General Morrison's legendary reputation. Stories circulated about her unconventional career path, her innovative tactical thinking, and her ability to identify exceptional soldiers regardless of their background or appearance. Some of the tales were undoubtedly exaggerated through repeated telling, but Maya knew enough about the general's actual service record to separate fact from fiction. General Morrison had earned her reputation through decades of distinguished service in some of the military's most challenging assignments. She had commanded units in multiple combat zones, developed new tactical doctrines that were now taught in military academies worldwide, and maintained a reputation for absolute integrity and exceptional judgment. Officers who served under her command were known throughout the military for their competence and professionalism. At precisely 0800 hours, a convoy of black vehicles arrived at the training facility's main entrance. Maya watched from her position near the parade ground as General Morrison emerged from the lead vehicle, her bearing unmistakably that of a senior military officer accustomed to command responsibility. Even at a distance, her presence seemed to change the energy of the entire facility. General Morrison was a woman of average height with steel-gray hair pulled back in a regulation bun and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with analytical precision. Her uniform was perfectly pressed but showed the subtle signs of someone who wore military clothing as a working uniform rather than a costume. She moved with the confident stride of someone completely comfortable with authority and responsibility. The formal reception included brief remarks from the facility commander and an overview of the training exercise's objectives and timeline. Maya listened carefully to General Morrison's response, noting the way she asked specific questions about unit composition, training scenarios, and evaluation criteria. This was clearly not a ceremonial visit but a serious evaluation of military readiness and capability. "I'm here to observe how our soldiers perform under realistic conditions," General Morrison said, her voice carrying clearly across the assembled formation. "I want to see tactical thinking, teamwork, and adaptability. I want to understand how well our training prepares soldiers for the challenges they'll face in actual combat situations." The morning's exercise was designed to be the most challenging yet, involving multiple units operating simultaneously in a complex urban environment with constantly changing objectives and enemy positions. Maya's squad was assigned to secure and hold a strategic intersection while coordinating with adjacent units to maintain overall territorial control. As her team prepared for deployment, Maya noticed that the recruits who had witnessed the previous day's confrontation were paying close attention to her tactical planning and decision-making process. Their earlier uncertainty had been replaced by genuine interest in learning from someone whose competence they had observed firsthand. Sergeant Chen asked Private Martinez during the pre-mission briefing, "How do you decide which building positions to prioritize when you can't see the entire battlefield?" Maya spread the tactical map on a nearby table, pointing out key terrain features and potential threat vectors. "You learn to read the ground and think like the enemy," she explained. "Look at sight lines, cover and concealment options, and natural avenues of approach. Then ask yourself where you would position forces if you were trying to control this area. The exercise began with a simulated artillery barrage, followed by coordinated infantry attacks from multiple directions. Maya's squad moved into position with practiced efficiency, establishing overlapping fields of fire and maintaining communication with adjacent units. The intensity of this scenario quickly revealed which soldiers had absorbed their training and which were still struggling with basic tactical concepts. Maya found herself naturally taking charge of tactical coordination between multiple squads, her experience and clear communication helping to synchronize their efforts against increasingly complex enemy movements. She could see General Morrison observing from various positions around the training area, making notes and occasionally speaking with other evaluation personnel. The tactical situation evolved rapidly as enemy forces attempted to exploit perceived weaknesses in the defensive position. Maya recognized the pattern of attacks and began adjusting her squad's positions to counter expected threats before they fully developed. Her ability to anticipate enemy movements and coordinate effective responses was drawing attention from both her fellow soldiers and the evaluation team. "Contact front," called one of the younger soldiers as simulated enemy forces attempted a frontal assault on their position. Maya immediately began directing defensive fires, while simultaneously coordinating with flanking units to prevent enemy penetration of their sector. "Martinez, shift your position to that building corner." "Johnson's squad, can you provide suppressive fire on that rooftop position?" Maya's commands were crisp and clear, her tactical vision helping to coordinate multiple moving parts into an effective defensive effort. Private Johnson, who had been assigned to a different squad but was operating in an adjacent sector, found himself following Maya's tactical guidance despite his previous antagonistic attitude. Her competence was undeniable, and even his wounded pride couldn't ignore the effectiveness of her leadership. The morning exercise concluded with Maya's combined force successfully repelling all enemy attacks while maintaining their assigned territorial control. During the after-action review, unit commanders specifically cited the exceptional coordination and tactical flexibility demonstrated by her sector of the operation. "Outstanding performance by Sergeant Chen's element," announced the exercise controller. "Textbook example of adaptive defense and inter-unit coordination." Maya felt a quiet satisfaction at the recognition, not because she needed validation but because it demonstrated that competence and professionalism were still valued over appearance and assumptions. She noticed several of the recruits from her barracks watching her with expressions of genuine respect and admiration. The afternoon brought an even more challenging scenario: a rescue mission in which multiple units had to coordinate to extract simulated casualties from a hostile urban environment while under constant enemy pressure. Maya found herself assigned as the assistant team leader for the primary extraction force, working directly with a senior staff sergeant from another unit. General Morrison positioned herself where she could observe the rescue operation directly, her presence adding additional pressure to an already demanding scenario. Maya could see other soldiers glancing nervously in the general's direction, clearly affected by the scrutiny of such a distinguished observer. The rescue mission required precise timing and flawless execution. Enemy forces controlled most of the urban area, casualty locations were difficult to access, and extraction routes were constantly threatened by sniper fire and improvised explosives. Maya found herself drawing on memories of actual combat operations, using hard-earned experience to guide her tactical decisions. "We need to create a diversion here," Maya told her team leader, pointing to a position on the tactical map. "If we can draw their attention to this sector, we can approach the casualty location from this direction with minimal exposure." "Good thinking, Chen. Make it happen." Maya coordinated with supporting units to establish the diversion while simultaneously preparing the main extraction team for their approach to the casualty site. The complexity of the operation required constant communication and split-second decision-making as the tactical situation evolved. The rescue team moved through the urban environment, with Maya providing tactical guidance based on her reading of enemy positions and likely responses. Her ability to anticipate threats and identify safe movement routes proved invaluable as the team navigated increasingly dangerous terrain. When they reached the simulated casualty location, Maya immediately began coordinating medical evacuation procedures while maintaining defensive security around the extraction site. Her experience with actual combat injuries made her movements efficient and purposeful as she directed the careful movement of wounded personnel. "We need to move fast," Maya called to her team. Enemy reinforcements will be converging on this position within minutes. The extraction proceeded smoothly under Maya's coordination, with the rescue team successfully reaching the casualty pickup point and beginning their movement to the designated safe zone. However, the exercise controllers had prepared one final challenge designed to test the team's ability to adapt to unexpected complications. Simulated enemy reinforcements suddenly appeared along the planned extraction route, forcing the rescue team to find an alternative path through hostile territory while carrying wounded personnel. Maya quickly analyzed the available options and identified a longer but safer route that would avoid the heaviest enemy concentrations. "This way," she called, leading the team through a series of buildings and alleyways that provided better cover and concealment. Her tactical instincts proved correct, as the team successfully avoided enemy contact and reached the extraction point without additional casualties. The rescue mission concluded with all simulated wounded personnel successfully evacuated and the extraction team safely withdrawn from hostile territory. During the debriefing session, Maya's tactical contributions were specifically recognized by both her team leader and the exercise evaluation personnel. General Morrison observed the debriefing session without comment, but Maya could see her making detailed notes about individual performance and tactical decision-making throughout the operation. The general's analytical approach suggested that she was evaluating far more than just technical competence, looking for evidence of leadership potential and battlefield judgment. As the afternoon exercises concluded, word spread that General Morrison would be conducting individual interviews with selected personnel. The news created a mixture of excitement and anxiety among the assembled soldiers, as everyone understood that such an interview could significantly impact their military careers. Maya felt surprisingly calm about the possibility of meeting with General Morrison. Her performance during the exercises had been solid, her tactical contributions had been recognized, and she was confident that her experience and professionalism would speak for themselves. Unlike some of her fellow soldiers, she had no need to pretend competence or hide inexperience. The evening brought an unexpected announcement during the daily briefing session. General Morrison would be observing one final exercise the following morning, a free-form tactical problem designed to test leadership and initiative under minimal supervision. Selected soldiers would be given independent command responsibilities and evaluated on their ability to accomplish mission objectives with limited guidance. Maya's name appeared on the list of soldiers selected for independent command roles, along with several other experienced personnel from different units. The assignment was both an honor and a significant responsibility, as their performance would be observed directly by General Morrison and could influence future career opportunities. Private Johnson's name was notably absent from the leadership list. Though he was assigned to serve under one of the selected team leaders, Maya noticed him studying the assignment roster with obvious disappointment, perhaps beginning to understand the connection between competence and responsibility in military organizations. As soldiers prepared for the final exercise, Maya found herself approached by several of the recruits who had witnessed the previous day's events. They seemed eager to understand how she had earned the opportunity to demonstrate leadership at such a high level. "Sergeant Chen," asked Private Martinez, "what advice would you give to someone who wants to become a real leader?" Maya considered the question carefully before responding. "Leadership isn't about rank or authority," she said. "It's about competence, integrity, and the willingness to take responsibility for your decisions and their consequences. You earn leadership through performance, not through politics or popularity." "What about dealing with people who don't respect you initially?" asked another recruit, clearly thinking about Johnson's behavior. "Some people judge based on appearance or assumptions," Maya replied. "The only way to change their minds is through consistent performance and professional behavior. Let your actions speak louder than their prejudices." As the evening progressed, Maya prepared for what would likely be her most important day of the training exercise. The opportunity to demonstrate leadership under General Morrison's direct observation was significant, but she approached it with the same methodical preparation that had served her well throughout her military career. The final morning would test everything she had learned about tactics, leadership, and decision-making under pressure. Maya felt ready for whatever challenges might arise, confident that her experience and training had prepared her for this moment. Tomorrow would provide the opportunity to prove that competence and character mattered more than appearance or first impressions. The scars on her face were reminders of battles fought and comrades saved, proof of her commitment to the military values of courage, sacrifice, and service. Whatever happened in the morning's exercise, those facts would remain unchanged. Some things were worth fighting for, regardless of the personal cost. The final morning dawned clear and cold, with frost covering the training ground equipment and a crisp wind carrying the promise of a challenging day ahead. Maya woke before reveille, using the quiet moments before official morning activities to mentally rehearse potential scenarios and tactical considerations for the day's exercise. The independent leadership exercise was designed to simulate real-world command situations where officers and senior non-commissioned officers had to make critical decisions with incomplete information and limited resources. Each selected leader would be given a tactical problem with minimal guidance and evaluated on their ability to develop effective solutions under pressure. Maya moved through her morning preparation routine with particular attention to detail, understanding that every aspect of her performance would be observed and evaluated. Her uniform was immaculate, her equipment was perfectly organized, and her bearing reflected the professional competence that had earned her selection for this opportunity. The atmosphere throughout the facility was noticeably more intense than previous mornings. Word had spread that General Morrison's evaluation could influence assignments, promotions, and future career opportunities for the soldiers involved. Even the most confident personnel seemed affected by the weight of expectations and the significance of the day's activities. During breakfast, Maya noticed Private Johnson sitting alone at a corner table, apparently lost in thought about his role in the day's exercise. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by what appeared to be genuine reflection about his behavior and its consequences. Several other recruits from their barracks occasionally glanced in his direction but seemed uncertain about whether to approach him. Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. She picked up her tray and walked over to Johnson's table, settling into the seat across from him without invitation or explanation. The young private looked up with a mixture of surprise and wariness, clearly uncertain about her intentions. "Good morning, Private," Maya said simply, beginning to eat her breakfast without fanfare or obvious agenda. "Good morning, Sergeant Chen," Johnson replied carefully, his voice lacking any trace of his previous cockiness. They ate in silence for several minutes before Johnson finally spoke again. "Sergeant, I want to apologize for what I said the other day. It was wrong, and I know that now." Maya looked at him directly, studying his expression for signs of sincerity or manipulation. What she saw was a young man genuinely grappling with the realization that his assumptions and behavior had been fundamentally flawed. "Apology accepted, Private. The question now is what you've learned from the experience." Johnson nodded slowly. "I learned that I don't know as much as I thought I did. I made judgments about people based on things that don't matter. And I disrespected someone who had earned respect through service. And what are you going to do differently going forward?" "I'm going to focus on being the best soldier I can be instead of worrying about how other people look or where they've been. I'm going to earn my place here through performance, not by putting other people down." Maya finished her breakfast before responding. "That's a good start, Private. Remember that talk is easy, but consistent action over time is what builds trust and respect." "Yes, Sergeant, I understand." As they prepared to leave the mess hall, Johnson hesitated before speaking again. "Sergeant Chen, would it be possible for me to request assignment to your team for today's exercise? I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like the chance to learn from someone who obviously knows what they're doing." Maya considered the request carefully. Taking Johnson on her team would be a risk, both for mission success and for her own evaluation by General Morrison. On the other hand, it would provide an opportunity to directly influence a young soldier's development and possibly prevent future problems with his attitude and behavior. "I'll consider it, Private. But understand that if you're on my team, you'll be held to the highest standards. There won't be room for attitude problems or anything less than complete professionalism." "I understand, Sergeant. I won't let you down." The morning briefing took place in the main training facility auditorium, with General Morrison personally explaining the day's exercise parameters and evaluation criteria. Her presence commanded absolute attention from every soldier in the room, and her words carried the weight of decades of combat experience and military leadership. "Today's exercise is designed to test your ability to think independently and lead effectively under pressure," General Morrison explained, her voice carrying clearly throughout the large room. You'll be given tactical problems with no predetermined solutions. Success will be measured not by following a script, but by demonstrating sound judgment, effective leadership, and mission accomplishment. Maya listened intently as the general outlined the specific scenarios each team would face. The problems were complex and multi-layered, requiring leaders to balance competing priorities while managing limited resources and evolving threat situations. It was exactly the kind of challenge that separated competent soldiers from exceptional ones. Remember that leadership is not about having all the answers, General Morrison continued. It's about making good decisions with incomplete information, adapting to changing circumstances, and inspiring others to perform at their highest level. I'll be evaluating not just tactical competence, but character, integrity, and the ability to develop and execute effective solutions under pressure. When team assignments were announced, Maya was pleased to see that her request to include Private Johnson had been approved. Her team also included several experienced soldiers from different units, creating a diverse group with varying levels of experience and expertise. The composition would test her ability to quickly assess individual capabilities and organize an effective fighting force. Maya's assigned scenario involved a hostage rescue operation in an urban environment, complicated by civilian populations, multiple enemy positions, and time-sensitive intelligence about the hostage's location. The tactical problem required careful planning, precise execution, and the ability to adapt rapidly to changing circumstances. As her team assembled at their designated starting position, Maya took time to assess each soldier's background, experience, and apparent capabilities. Private Johnson was clearly the least experienced member of the group, but his attitude was markedly different from their first encounter. He listened attentively to instructions and seemed genuinely eager to contribute positively to the team's efforts. Our objective is clear, Maya began, spreading the tactical map for her team to study. We need to locate and extract the hostages while minimizing civilian casualties and neutralizing the enemy threat. This will require coordination, precise timing, and the ability to adapt if our initial plan doesn't work. She assigned specific roles to each team member based on their experience and demonstrated capabilities. Johnson was given responsibility for ammunition, resupply, and casualty evacuation, roles that were important but allowed him to contribute without risking mission failure if his inexperience proved problematic. Questions about the plan or your individual responsibilities? Maya asked, scanning her team's faces for signs of confusion or concern. Sergeant Chen asked one of the more experienced soldiers, "What's our backup plan if the primary approach is compromised?" Maya pointed to alternative routes on the map, explaining contingency procedures for various scenarios that might develop during the operation. Her planning was thorough and demonstrated the kind of tactical thinking that came from actual combat experience combined with professional military education. The exercise began with Maya's team moving into the urban training environment while General Morrison and her evaluation staff positioned themselves to observe the operation from multiple vantage points. Maya could see the general occasionally making notes, but she forced herself to focus on the mission rather than the evaluation process. The approach to the target building required careful movement through areas controlled by simulated enemy forces, while avoiding detection by civilian role players scattered throughout the environment. Maya's team moved with practiced stealth, their coordination reflecting her clear pre-mission planning and effective communication. "Contact left," whispered one of her soldiers as they spotted enemy positions overlooking their planned route. Maya quickly assessed the situation and made a tactical decision to modify their approach, using an alternative path that would avoid enemy observation while maintaining their timeline for reaching the hostage location. The modified route proved more challenging than anticipated, requiring the team to navigate through a series of buildings while maintaining security and avoiding civilian areas. Maya's experience with actual urban combat operations proved invaluable as she guided her team through the complex environment. When they reached the building containing the hostages, Maya could see that the tactical situation was more complicated than the initial briefing had indicated. Enemy positions covered multiple approaches, civilian role players complicated potential lines of fire, and intelligence updates suggested that the hostages might have been moved to a different location within the building. "Change of plans," Maya announced quietly to her team. We need to gather more intelligence before committing to an assault. Johnson, establish an observation post here. Martinez, provide security. The rest of us will conduct reconnaissance to determine the actual hostage location. The reconnaissance phase revealed that the hostages were indeed in a different location than originally briefed, and enemy forces had established defensive positions that would make a direct assault extremely costly. Maya realized that success would require a more sophisticated approach than simple application of overwhelming force. We're going to create a diversion here, Maya explained, pointing to a position away from the actual hostage location. That should draw most of the enemy forces away from the real target. Once they're committed to responding to the diversion, we'll execute the actual rescue from this direction. The plan required precise timing and coordination between different elements of her team. Maya assigned responsibilities for the diversion, the actual rescue operation, and security for both phases of the mission. Private Johnson was given a crucial role in coordinating communications between the different elements, a responsibility that demonstrated Maya's growing confidence in his reliability. Everyone clear on their assignments? Maya asked, meeting each team member's eyes to ensure understanding and commitment. Yes, Sergeant, they replied in unison. The diversion began exactly on schedule, with simulated explosions and small arms fire drawing enemy attention away from the hostage location. Maya watched as enemy forces moved to respond to the apparent threat, creating the opening her team needed for the actual rescue operation. Go, 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 Maya commanded, leading her rescue element toward the building containing the hostages while enemy forces were distracted by the diversion. The rescue team moved through the building with practiced efficiency, their movements coordinated through hand signals and whispered communications. Maya's tactical instincts guided them through the complex interior layout, while avoiding potential ambush positions in civilian areas. They located the hostages exactly where Maya's reconnaissance had indicated, guarded by a minimal enemy force that had remained behind when the majority of defenders responded to the diversion. The rescue operation proceeded smoothly, with hostages secured and prepared for evacuation within minutes of reaching their location. Hostages secure, Maya reported through her radio. Beginning evacuation to extract point. The evacuation phase proved more challenging than the rescue itself, as enemy forces had begun to realize that the diversion was a deception and were returning to the hostage location. Maya's team found themselves moving through increasingly hostile territory while protecting civilian role players and ensuring the safety of the rescued hostages. Private Johnson's performance during this phase exceeded all expectations. His communication skills proved excellent, his situational awareness was strong, and his dedication to protecting the hostages demonstrated genuine military professionalism. Maya found herself impressed by the transformation in his attitude and performance. Johnson, excellent work on communications, Maya told him during a brief pause in their movement. Keep it up. Thank you, Sergeant. I won't let the team down. The extraction proceeded according to plan, with Maya's team successfully delivering the hostages to safety while maintaining tactical security throughout the operation. The exercise concluded with all objectives achieved and minimal simulated casualties among both military personnel and civilian role players. During the immediate after-action review, Maya's tactical decisions and leadership were specifically praised by the exercise controllers. Her ability to adapt to changing circumstances, coordinate complex operations, and inspire effective performance from her team had been clearly demonstrated under the direct observation of General Morrison and her evaluation staff. Outstanding mission planning and execution, announced the senior controller. Textbook example of adaptive leadership under pressure. Maya felt quiet satisfaction at the recognition, but her attention was focused on her team's performance and the lessons learned during the exercise. Private Johnson, in particular, had demonstrated significant growth in both attitude and capability, suggesting that proper leadership and clear expectations could help develop even problematic soldiers into valuable team members. General Morrison observed the debriefing session without comment, but Maya could see her making detailed notes about individual performance and team dynamics. The general's analytical approach suggested that she was evaluating far more than just technical competence, looking for evidence of leadership potential and character under pressure. As the formal exercise activities concluded, Maya realized that the day had provided more than just an opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities. It had also shown her the satisfaction that came from helping other soldiers develop their potential and contribute positively to team success. Leadership, she understood, was ultimately about bringing out the best in others, rather than simply showcasing personal competence. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the training facility as soldiers gathered for the final evaluation session. The morning's exercises had concluded successfully, but everyone understood that General Morrison's assessment would ultimately determine how the day's achievements would be remembered and what opportunities might result from their performance. Maya found herself both exhausted and energized by the morning's intense activities. Leading a complex tactical operation under such scrutiny had demanded every bit of her experience and training, but the successful completion of all mission objectives provided a deep sense of satisfaction that made the effort worthwhile. Private Johnson approached her as the team prepared for debriefing, his expression showing a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty about how his performance had been evaluated. His transformation during the exercise had been remarkable, but Maya knew that lasting change would require sustained effort and continued professional development. "Sergeant Chen," Johnson said quietly, "I wanted to thank you for giving me the chance to be part of your team today. I know I didn't deserve it after how I acted, but I learned more in one morning than I have in weeks of regular training." Maya studied the young soldier's face, looking for signs of sincerity or merely temporary enthusiasm that might fade once the pressure of evaluation was removed. What she saw was genuine appreciation and what appeared to be a fundamental shift in attitude toward military service and personal responsibility. "You earned your place on the team through your performance today, Private. The question now is whether you'll maintain that standard going forward." "I will, Sergeant. I understand now what real military professionalism looks like." The formal debriefing session took place in the main conference room, with General Morrison personally conducting the evaluation of each team's performance. Her questions were precise and penetrating, designed to test not only tactical knowledge but also decision-making processes and leadership philosophy under pressure. When Maya's team was called forward for evaluation, she felt the familiar mixture of nervousness and confidence that came with being held accountable for important decisions. General Morrison's reputation for thorough and fair assessment was well known, but the stakes were higher than any previous evaluation in Maya's military career. "Sergeant Chen," General Morrison began, consulting her notes from the morning's observation, "walk me through your decision-making process when you discovered that the initial intelligence about hostage location was incorrect." Maya straightened to attention before responding. "Ma'am, when reconnaissance revealed that the situation was different from our briefing, I had to choose between proceeding with the original plan despite changed circumstances or adapting our approach to address the actual tactical situation." "And how did you make that choice?" "I evaluated the risks and benefits of both options, ma'am. Proceeding with the original plan would have been faster but likely would have resulted in mission failure and unnecessary casualties. Adapting our approach required more time and coordination, but offered a higher probability of success with acceptable risk levels." General Morrison made additional notes before continuing her evaluation. "Your use of deception during the operation was particularly effective. Where did you learn that tactical approach?" Maya hesitated briefly, knowing that her answer would reveal details about her combat experience that she generally preferred to keep private. "Ma'am, I learned the effectiveness of deception operations during actual combat deployments. Sometimes misdirection is more valuable than direct application of force." "Describe a specific example from your combat experience." The question was direct and unavoidable. Maya realized that General Morrison was testing not only her tactical knowledge but also her willingness to draw on real-world experience to inform current operations. Professional competence required honest assessment of all available resources, including hard-earned lessons from dangerous situations. "During an operation in Afghanistan, ma'am, our unit was tasked with disrupting an enemy logistics operation. Direct assault would have been costly and likely unsuccessful due to the enemy's defensive advantages. Instead, we used coordinated diversions to draw defenders away from their primary positions, allowing a smaller team to achieve mission objectives with minimal casualties." "And what was your role in that operation?" "I was responsible for coordinating the diversion, ma'am, and subsequently for evacuating wounded personnel when the operation encountered unexpected complications." General Morrison's expression didn't change, but Maya could see increased attention in her eyes as she made additional notes. Those complications resulted in your injuries, I assume? Yes, ma'am. 3 soldiers were wounded during the extraction phase. Getting them to safety required movement through hostile territory under enemy fire. And you made that movement despite being injured yourself? Maya felt uncomfortable with the direction of the questioning, not because she was ashamed of her actions but because she had never considered them particularly noteworthy. In her experience, soldiers did what was necessary to accomplish missions and protect their teammates, regardless of personal cost. Ma'am, the mission required evacuating wounded personnel. My injuries were not immediately life-threatening, so I remained operational until all team members were safely extracted. General Morrison continued making notes for several moments before moving to evaluate other aspects of Maya's performance. Her questions covered tactical decision-making, team leadership, resource management, and adaptability under changing conditions. Each query was designed to test specific competencies that distinguished exceptional soldiers from merely adequate ones. Sergeant Chen, how do you assess the performance of Private Johnson during today's exercise? The question surprised Maya, as it suggested that General Morrison had specifically noticed Johnson's participation and transformation. Maya chose her words carefully, wanting to provide honest assessment while acknowledging the young soldier's genuine improvement. Ma'am, Private Johnson demonstrated significant professional growth during today's exercise. His communication skills were excellent, his situational awareness was strong, and his commitment to mission success was evident throughout the operation. But you had reservations about including him on your team initially? Maya realized that General Morrison had been observing far more than just the formal exercise activities. Her awareness of interpersonal dynamics and individual soldier development suggested a level of attention to detail that was both impressive and slightly intimidating. Ma'am, Private Johnson's initial attitude suggested that he might not be ready for the responsibilities involved in today's exercise. However, he demonstrated that people can change when given appropriate opportunities and clear expectations. And what specific actions convinced you to give him that opportunity? He approached me directly to request assignment to my team, ma'am. He acknowledged his previous mistakes, explained what he had learned from them, and committed to performing at the highest standard. His willingness to accept responsibility and seek improvement suggested potential for positive change. General Morrison completed her evaluation of Maya's team and moved on to assess other units' performance. The debriefing session continued for another hour, as each team leader explained their tactical decisions and lessons learned from the morning's challenging scenarios. Maya listened carefully to the other presentations, noting different approaches to similar problems and identifying techniques that might prove useful in future operations. The diversity of solutions demonstrated that effective military leadership could take many forms while maintaining consistent core principles of competence, integrity, and mission focus. When all teams had completed their evaluations, General Morrison dismissed the formal session but requested that specific individuals remain for additional discussion. Maya's name was on the list, along with several other team leaders and a few individual soldiers whose performance had apparently warranted special attention. Private Johnson was not on the list, but Maya noticed him watching hopefully as the selected personnel remained in the conference room. His disappointment at not being included was evident, but he accepted the situation with the same professional maturity he had demonstrated throughout the day. Private Johnson, Maya called as he prepared to leave. Outstanding work today. Continue developing those skills and that attitude. Thank you, Sergeant. I won't forget what I learned from you. General Morrison's individual discussions were brief but intensive, focusing on specific aspects of performance and potential career development opportunities. When Maya's turn came, she found herself facing questions that went far beyond tactical competence to address leadership philosophy and long-term professional goals. Sergeant Chen, your performance today was exceptional, but I'm more interested in your approach to soldier development. Your handling of Private Johnson suggests that you understand leadership as something more than just tactical competence. Maya considered her response carefully. Ma'am, I believe that effective leadership requires helping others reach their potential rather than simply showcasing personal capabilities. Sometimes that means giving people opportunities to prove they're better than their worst moments. And what convinced you that Private Johnson deserved that opportunity? His willingness to acknowledge his mistakes and request a chance to do better. Ma'am, in my experience, soldiers who can honestly assess their own performance and commit to improvement often become the most reliable team members. General Morrison made additional notes before continuing. Your combat experience has obviously influenced your leadership approach. How do you balance lessons learned in actual operations with the requirements of peacetime training? Ma'am, combat teaches you that missions succeed or fail based on teamwork and trust, rather than individual heroics. Peacetime training should focus on developing those same qualities, preparing soldiers for situations where their performance might determine life or death outcomes for themselves and their teammates. And what role does personal sacrifice play in that philosophy? The question touched on something Maya rarely discussed, even with close military colleagues. Her scars were visible reminders of choices made under pressure, but she had never considered those actions particularly noteworthy or worthy of special recognition. Ma'am, military service inherently involves accepting risks and making sacrifices for larger purposes. Individual comfort and safety are always secondary to mission accomplishment and team welfare. That's not heroism, it's just basic professional responsibility. General Morrison studied Maya's face for a long moment before responding. Sergeant Chen, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want an honest answer. Are you interested in opportunities for advanced leadership training and increased responsibility? The question was unexpected and significant. Advanced leadership training usually led to promotion opportunities and assignments that could dramatically alter the trajectory of a military career. Maya had always focused on performing her current duties to the best of her ability, rather than actively pursuing advancement. Ma'am, I'm committed to serving wherever the military can best use my skills and experience. If that includes advanced training and increased responsibility, I'm prepared to accept those challenges. Good. I'll be recommending you for several leadership development programs that should provide opportunities to expand your capabilities and advance your career. Your combination of tactical competence, combat experience, and genuine leadership ability is exactly what the military needs in its senior non-commissioned officers. Maya felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility at the unexpected opportunity. Advanced leadership training would provide chances to develop new skills and potentially influence military doctrine and training procedures. It would also mean increased responsibility for developing other soldiers and shaping future military capabilities. Thank you, ma'am. I won't disappoint you. I don't expect you will, Sergeant Chen. Your performance today confirms what your service record already indicated. You're exactly the kind of soldier who makes our military stronger. Number 10. As the individual discussions concluded, and soldiers began preparing for evening activities, Maya reflected on the remarkable changes that had occurred during just 3 days of training. Her own performance had opened doors to opportunities she had never actively pursued, while Private Johnson had demonstrated that proper leadership could help even problematic soldiers develop into valuable team members. The scars on her face no longer felt like marks of damage, but rather like badges of experience that had helped her earn the respect and trust of fellow soldiers and senior leadership. They were reminders of prices paid and lessons learned. Proof that she belonged exactly where she was, and was ready for whatever challenges might come next. The evening brought news that the training exercise had officially concluded, and units would begin departing the following morning. For Maya, however, the real journey was just beginning. Advanced leadership training would provide opportunities to influence military culture and help develop the next generation of soldiers who would face their own tests of courage, competence, and character. The final morning at Fort Bragg arrived with a mixture of accomplishment and anticipation as soldiers prepared for departure. The 3-day training exercise had concluded successfully, but for many participants, the experience had provided more than just tactical education. Relationships had been tested, assumptions had been challenged, and individual potential had been revealed under the pressure of realistic military scenarios. Maya packed her gear with the same methodical precision she brought to all military activities, but her thoughts were focused on the opportunities that General Morrison had outlined during their private conversation. Advanced leadership training represented a significant step forward in her career, with potential implications that extended far beyond personal advancement. The leadership development programs that General Morrison had mentioned were designed to prepare senior non-commissioned officers for positions of substantial responsibility within the military structure. Graduates typically found themselves assigned to training facilities, staff positions, and operational units, where their influence could shape doctrine, policy, and the development of future military leaders. Private Johnson approached Maya's bunk as she completed her packing, his expression showing the same professional respect that had characterized their interactions since his transformation during the exercise. His gear was neatly organized, and his uniform was immaculate, reflecting the attention to detail that had emerged during their shared tactical operations. "Sergeant Chen," Johnson said formally, "I wanted to speak with you before we head back to our regular units." Maya looked up from her packing, noting the serious tone in the young soldier's voice. "What's on your mind, Private? I wanted to ask if you have any advice for someone who wants to develop into the kind of soldier you are. I know I have a lot to learn, but I'm committed to becoming someone the military can count on." Maya considered the question carefully, understanding that her response could significantly influence Johnson's future development as a soldier and as a person. The transformation she had witnessed during the exercise suggested genuine potential, but lasting change would require sustained effort and continued growth. "First," Maya began, "remember that competence is built through consistent performance over time, not through dramatic gestures or single impressive actions. Focus on mastering the basics before trying to tackle advanced skills." "Yes, Sergeant. What else?" "Second, never stop learning from the soldiers around you, regardless of their rank or experience level. Some of the best tactical ideas I've encountered came from junior enlisted personnel who approached problems with fresh perspectives." Johnson nodded seriously, apparently taking mental notes about Maya's guidance. "And third? Third, understand that military service is ultimately about something larger than personal advancement or recognition. When you're making decisions under pressure, always ask yourself what choice best serves the mission and protects your teammates. That perspective will guide you through situations where there are no clear answers." Maya finished securing her equipment and turned to face Johnson directly. "Most importantly, remember that character matters more than capability. The military can teach you tactics and technical skills, but integrity and moral courage have to come from within. Never compromise those qualities, regardless of pressure or circumstances." "I understand, Sergeant. Thank you for everything you've taught me." "You taught yourself, Private. I just provided the opportunity. Now it's up to you to continue developing those qualities." The morning formation brought together all units that had participated in the training exercise for a final briefing and dismissal ceremony. General Morrison addressed the assembled soldiers, acknowledging their performance and emphasizing the importance of applying lessons learned to their regular duties and future military service. "Over the past 3 days," General Morrison said, her voice carrying clearly across the formation, "you've demonstrated that our military continues to attract and develop soldiers of exceptional quality. Your performance under challenging conditions reflects credit on yourselves, your units, and the military as a whole." Maya listened attentively to the general's remarks, noting her emphasis on continued professional development and the responsibility that comes with military expertise. The message was clear. The training exercise was just one step in a longer journey of learning and growth that would continue throughout their military careers. "Some of you have shown particular promise for advanced responsibilities," General Morrison continued, her eyes briefly meeting Maya's across the formation. "Leadership is not about rank or position, but about the ability to inspire others to perform at their highest level. I encourage all of you to seek opportunities to develop those qualities." After the formal ceremony concluded, General Morrison approached Maya directly, carrying a folder that obviously contained official documentation related to their previous conversation about leadership training opportunities. "Sergeant Chen," the general said, extending the folder. "Here are the preliminary paperwork and information about the leadership programs we discussed. Review everything carefully and let me know if you have questions about requirements or timelines." Maya accepted the folder with appropriate military courtesy. "Thank you, ma'am. I'll review everything thoroughly." I also wanted to tell you something that isn't in those official documents. General Morrison continued, her tone becoming more personal. During my time observing this exercise, I paid particular attention to interactions between soldiers, leadership under pressure, and character demonstrated through actions rather than words. Yes, ma'am, your handling of the situation with Private Johnson was exactly the kind of leadership the military needs. You could have responded to his initial behavior with discipline and official channels, which would have been entirely appropriate. Instead, you chose to provide guidance and opportunity for growth. Maya felt uncertain about how to respond to such direct praise from such a distinguished officer. Ma'am, I just tried to help a young soldier learn from his mistakes. That's exactly my point, Sergeant. You understood that effective leadership sometimes means helping people become better than they initially appear to be. That perspective is rare and valuable. General Morrison paused before continuing. I want to share something with you that might provide context for why I value that quality so highly. Early in my own career, I made some significant mistakes in judgment and attitude. A senior NCO could have written me off as a problem officer, but instead chose to provide guidance and opportunities to learn from those mistakes. Ma'am, that intervention changed the entire trajectory of my career and possibly my life. Without that second chance, I might never have developed into someone capable of positive military leadership. Your willingness to provide similar guidance to Private Johnson reflects the same kind of wisdom and character. Maya began to understand the deeper significance of her interactions with Johnson and why General Morrison had paid such close attention to that aspect of the exercise. Leadership development wasn't just about tactical competence, but about the ability to recognize and cultivate potential in others. Ma'am, I learned from watching Johnson's transformation that sometimes people just need clear expectations and genuine opportunities to prove themselves. Exactly. That understanding will serve you well in advanced leadership positions, where your influence can shape the development of many soldiers over time. As General Morrison prepared to depart, she offered one final piece of guidance that would stay with Maya throughout her subsequent military career. Sergeant Chen, as you advance in responsibility, remember that your scars represent more than just personal experience. They're proof that you've been tested under the most challenging conditions and emerged with your integrity intact. That credibility gives weight to your leadership that no amount of theoretical training can provide. I'll remember that, ma'am. I'm confident you will. Good luck with the leadership programs, and I look forward to hearing about your continued success. The departure process proceeded smoothly as various units prepared for transportation back to their home bases. Maya found herself approached by several soldiers who had participated in the exercise, each expressing appreciation for her leadership and tactical expertise during the challenging scenarios. Private Martinez, who had served effectively in Maya's squad throughout the exercise, stopped to speak with her before boarding his unit's transport vehicle. Sergeant Chen, Martinez said, I wanted to thank you for showing us what professional military leadership looks like. I learned more in 3 days working with you than I have in months of regular training. Keep developing those skills, Martinez. You have good instincts and the right attitude. Focus on consistent performance and continued learning. Yes, Sergeant. I hope we have the chance to work together again. As Maya prepared to board her own transport, she noticed Private Johnson standing nearby with his unit, apparently hoping for a final opportunity to speak with her. She walked over to where he was waiting, recognizing the importance of providing encouragement for his continued development. Private Johnson, Maya said, extending her hand for a handshake. Stay in touch with your progress. I'll be interested to hear how your career develops. I will, Sergeant. And thank you again for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Remember what I told you about character and competence. Those qualities will carry you through whatever challenges you encounter. The transport vehicles departed Fort Bragg, carrying soldiers back to their regular assignments. But Maya knew that the influence of the training exercise would extend far beyond the 3 days they had spent together. Relationships had been formed, lessons had been learned, and individual potential had been recognized and encouraged. During the journey back to her home base, Maya reviewed the leadership training materials that General Morrison had provided. The programs were comprehensive and challenging, designed to prepare senior non-commissioned officers for positions where their influence could shape military policy and doctrine at the highest levels. The opportunity represented everything Maya had worked toward throughout her military career, even when she hadn't been consciously pursuing advancement. Her combination of combat experience, tactical competence, and demonstrated leadership ability had created possibilities she had never imagined when she first enlisted. More importantly, the exercise had demonstrated that her approach to military service, focusing on mission accomplishment, team development, and personal integrity, was valued and recognized by senior leadership. The scars that had once made her self-conscious were now understood as credentials that gave weight to her professional opinions and leadership decisions. 6 months later, Maya found herself assigned to the Advanced Leadership Development course at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. The program was intensive and demanding, bringing together senior non-commissioned officers from throughout the military for education in strategic thinking, organizational leadership, and policy development. During one of the program's practical exercises, Maya received an unexpected letter from Private Johnson, who had been promoted to specialist and assigned to a leadership development track within his own unit. His letter described continued professional growth and expressed gratitude for the guidance he had received during the Fort Bragg exercise. The letter concluded with news that brought a smile to Maya's face. Johnson had been selected to mentor newly assigned soldiers in his unit, with particular responsibility for helping problematic personnel develop into productive team members. The cycle of leadership development was continuing, with Johnson now providing the same kind of guidance and opportunity that had transformed his own military career. Maya realized that the true measure of leadership wasn't personal advancement but the ability to help others achieve their potential. Her willingness to see beyond Johnson's initial behavior, to recognize his underlying capability, had created ripple effects that would influence many soldiers over time. The scars on her face would always be reminders of prices paid and lessons learned during dangerous operations, but they also represented something more. Proof that competence, character, and courage were more important than appearance or first impressions. In a profession where lives depended on correct judgments about people and situations, that understanding was invaluable. As Maya prepared for the next phase of her military career, she carried with her the knowledge that effective leadership was ultimately about recognizing and developing potential in others. Sometimes the most important battles were fought not against external enemies but against assumptions, prejudices, and the tendency to judge others by surface appearances rather than character and capability. The young woman who had once been teased about her scars had become a leader whose influence would help shape the military for years to come. Her call sign would soon be known throughout the special operations community, not for the circumstances that had left her scarred, but for the competence, integrity, and leadership that had earned her the respect of soldiers at every level of the military hierarchy.